Hello and welcome back to NZ Unlimited. Today I'm here with my co-host Nick, who is going to be talking to us a little bit about athletic development today. So Nick, why don't you start with telling us what exactly is athletic development?
Sure. So when we say athletic development, or when I say athletic development, it basically I'm referring to physical preparation and everything that goes into that. So what does that look like? I think that a lot of the time, when we think about lifting weights, we think about getting bigger. We think about bodybuilding. We think about Arnold Schwarzenegger and pumping iron. And I know that that's where my mind goes, and that's where a lot of people's mind goes. But when we talk athletic development, that's but getting bigger is one part of that. Hypertrophy is one aspect, but we want to look at the entire umbrella of physical development, and that's going to entail speed, strength, endurance, rhythm, timing, uh, recovery, and all sorts of different physical attributes that fall under the umbrella of physical preparation or physical performance. And then we want to look at, okay, so we have these general physical qualities of strength, speed, endurance, and mobility, or rhythm and timing. And then we want to look at, from there, that forms the base of a physical development pyramid. And then if you're, say, just an everyday athlete, or a person that just wants to get better at life, we might just spend the entire time working on these physical qualities, these general physical qualities that make up the base of a pyramid, because life requires lots of different things. It doesn't only need you to be big, and it doesn't only need you to be strong, nor does it only require you to be fast or have endurance. It requires or mobility. It requires a balance of all of those things, and sometimes a little bit more of one, and sometimes a little bit more of the other. Off the back of that, we can then specialize and say, okay, so if we're not just an everyday athlete, if we're an athlete that competes in a specific sport, we can then say, what are the requirements for my sport, and when do I need to express these requirements? And then we can base decisions off, we've built this base pyramid of physical preparation or physical performance, and we have that as a nice base for our pyramid. And now, say your sport requires you to be really strong, you're a power lifter. The only thing that your sport requires is maximal strength. Off of that base, we can then build a really tall peak of sport specific physical qualities like strength. Say you're a field athlete and you're required to express speed and strength and agility and endurance. We can then peak those physical qualities as well throughout a year, throughout a season, and throughout these cycles of programming, to make sure that at any given moment, you're in the best position possible to express these physical qualities and do the things that you need to do to be amazing at your sport. So essentially, athletic development is physical preparation, and we break that up into the different physical qualities that we want to work on at any given moment, and then we make training decisions based on those qualities and the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's probably a lot of athletes don't quite understand how important it is to work on those different qualities. I know that's something that you've really taught me recently. It's not just all about strength. And I know I've even done some consult with nutrition clients when I ask them what their training's like. They're like, oh, I just do a bro split. So, why is it important for athletes to be working on athletic development and have this different style of training?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. My point of view is that it's probably the most important thing that you can do from a physical standpoint is make sure that you're able to express all of these physical qualities at any given moment, regardless of your sport. So I think a lot of people, and myself included, and I've told this story a few times on a few different podcasts of how, for the first long time of my training, it was just I just trained with bodybuilders and I trained as a bodybuilder. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. That's how you grow muscle, that's how you get bigger. And as a result of doing that, you're also going to get stronger than if you didn't do it. But as you mentioned, there's many other qualities, physical qualities that we want that we can work on inside of the gym other than just hypertrophy. And what I've found and what we know is that if you do spend time focusing on these other qualities like strength, speed, endurance, agility, mobility, and leaning into the different aspects of these physical qualities, hypertrophy happens as almost like a happy accident off the back of that. Will it happen to the same degree as if your training is focused on hypertrophy? No. Like you're not going to train like a rugby league player and just wake up one day and look like Arnie. That's the hypertrophy is not going to occur to that level, but it will happen to the level that you need it to happen. A rugby league player doesn't need to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. A swimmer doesn't need to have the hypertrophy that Ronnie Coleman expresses in Mr. Olympia. They need to have as much muscle that is required for their sport. And there is a thing of I am muscular enough.
Yeah.
I am strong enough. Does a swimmer or a rock climber or a runner need to possess the absolute strength of a powerlifter? Certainly not. Do they need to be strong enough to do they need to be strong enough for the requirements of their sport? Do they need to have resilience in certain positions that they're going to need to express force in during their sport? Yes, certainly. So when we say, can you be strong enough? I believe that you can be strong enough for the sport that you play. And so when we look at athletic development and you ask me the question as why it's important, I think it's important because if you're going to be an athlete and if you want to really excel in your sport, you need to possess the physical qualities required for your sport. If you are a rugby league player, you need to possess a certain level of speed. You need to possess a certain level of strength. You need to possess a certain level of agility, of mobility, of endurance. All of these qualities need to be worked on every single week so that when required, you are able to express those qualities within a game scenario. And it's not your physical qualities that are letting you down. You may be lacking from a skill perspective, and that's a totally different conversation. But from a physical standpoint, the goal would be to have you able to express yourself physically within your sport at any given moment within any of these qualities, and having the ability to do that opens up movement options for an athlete within their sport.
Yeah, wow, that's so interesting. So, how would you maybe give advice to an athlete who is so tied up in training a certain way and encourage them to train more specifically for their sport?
Definitely. So, this is something that I work with athletes on every day, and it's by no means an easy conversation or an easy transition to make. But I do see it as a very valuable one, which is why we lean into it so much as a business, and why it is one of the two arms of our business is athletic development, because it's something that I'm extremely passionate about and something that I've seen personally within myself and my own performance athletically and inside and outside of the gym and on and off the field, but also in my clients and people that I work with one on one and in the small group setting, and how these men and women move from maybe training Maybe they're a rugby player that trains primarily as a power lifter or strongman or bodybuilder, and they really lean into one physical quality, and they're good enough to excel in their sport. But when they then start bringing up these other physical qualities, they can then have a lot more options within a game scenario. And the chaotic nature of sport is that you never know what physical quality you're going to need to display at any given moment to overcome your opponent. And when you have these options, it opens up a wide array of options for you to overcome your opponent in any given moment. So when we look at athletic development like that, I would say a big key takeaway for anyone that's listening that might be training a certain way and not focusing on all of these things is let's look at the general physical qualities of speed, strength, agility and endurance and mobility. And let's look at how we can lean into those qualities inside of the gym over a week. And then let's look at, on top of that, what are then the specific requirements of your sport? And then within your sport, what are the physical requirements of your position within the team? Are you required to express more strength and repeated efforts? Are you required to be extremely explosive and powerful, but also very agile, but then also required to do these repeated efforts over and over and over again for 80 minutes? And once we identify these physical qualities, we can then tailor a program over a week, over a month, over a year, over a multiple year time frame that brings up these attributes to a level that elevates you above the competition.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's all just so interesting because I feel like a lot of athletes may potentially not realize how important developing all these different athletic qualities are. So, if you could give some of these athletes a key piece of information to really start working on this, what do you think is the number one thing that they need to start doing right away?
The biggest thing that I think you could do is I think that as a listener and as an athlete, you have a deep understanding of the physical requirements of your sport because you play it every week. And I think if you're very honest with yourself, you will be able to make a very, very accurate assessment of what are the physical requirements of your sport for you to be the best athlete that you can be on a week to week basis. And then you can give an accurate assessment of where you fall on the continuum of those attributes. And I think if you do an honest assessment of where, how good is my speed, how good is my strength, how good is my agility, how good is my mobility, how good is my endurance, based on what is required for me to be the absolute best athlete I can be, and then look at the gaps in where you can fill in those physical attributes, and then start to lean into some of those attributes within your programming. We all have a natural tendency to gravitate towards our strengths,
Yeah.
gravitate towards the things we are good at. A fast athlete will generally want to do a lot of speed work because it's where they feel comfortable, it's where they are better than everyone else. A strong athlete will tend to want to come into the gym and just express strength over and over again because that's where they feel comfortable. A strong athlete generally won't want to do a whole lot of speed work or a whole lot of agility work or a whole lot of power work because those are attributes that may make them feel uncomfortable because they're not beating everyone else in them. So I think identifying where you are and where you possibly could be, and then filling those gaps is a really low hanging fruit in terms of what a listener might be able to take away and implement into their own training.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for that, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's episode.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. If you guys do want a little bit more information, maybe specific to yourself, you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to have those conversations. I'll put our Instagram handles in the show notes.